Welcome to Build Back Better. My name is Avery Kent, and I'm joined by Michael Cass. And today we're going to be talking about how to become a Zoom super user. As we all know, there is no shortage of standard video call platforms, and many of us use sometimes 4 or 5 of these in any given day, depending on who you're talking to. When you're thinking about what components comprise a standard video call platform, it's things like having a video call, enabling people to join, ideally also by phone if they need to, having the ability to record, having the ability to chat. So all of these tools have these basic elements and functionalities. However, we have found, especially for things like cohort-based programming, that Zoom above and beyond has features that enable you to have a more flexible and more higher engagement for your program online. And that's due to a few kind of specific features they have that, say, Microsoft Teams or Google Classroom or Google Meet doesn't have. So we're all familiar with this, the talking heads in the box, having things like gallery view. Most folks have now adopted this, but it did take a little while for folks to realize that that was a valuable feature to provide for their platforms. So Michael has had, I would say, more hours on Zoom. You've definitely hit your 10,000 hour master.
I've hit my 10,000 hours on Zoom.
Yes. So do you want to talk through some of the pros and cons of this platform in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about the really great things about Zoom, right? One of the things I love most about it is the ability to have small group conversations and breakout rooms. Zoom has an incredibly robust functionality around that. They also have really great customer support and integration. So if you're using something like Slack or Otter, if you're not familiar with otter.ai, it's a real-time transcription service that has both a free and a paid model. So if you want to transcribe your meetings, you can do that with Zoom Professional account or a Zoom Teams account directly inside the Zoom platform. It also integrates with Doodle and Zap. If you upgrade to have webinars, then you can have up to 100 people in your webinar. And that's if you're really more interested in information delivery than discussion. And it allows you to toggle between speaker view and gallery view. It also allows you to join both by phone and by video, and allows group and private messaging. There are some drawbacks. Although they've done a lot of work to shore this up, there are still some security concerns with Zoom. I will say that they are addressing those on an ongoing basis. There are a few persistent audio bugs, especially if you're connecting via Bluetooth. Sometimes that audio tends to patch in and out. Another con is the host has to control the breakouts, meaning either the host either starts them and has Zoom assign people to breakout rooms automatically, or the host has to place manually each person in a breakout room. And you can't chat or record across breakouts, meaning if you're in a breakout and you chat inside of it, that chat leaves and it gets erased when you leave that breakout room. So that chat won't come back to the main room with you. All of that being said, Zoom, I think, is by far the most popular platform right now, and for good reason. It's really well put together. They've put a lot of thought into usability. And it ends up being a very flexible platform.
One of the new ways to get the most out of Zoom that we've learned has to do with this idea of the host having control of the breakout. One of our major concerns when we were first using Zoom and everybody was going virtual was this question of participant agency. So for example, if part of your program you leverage an unconference, or you want to be able to have multiple breakout sessions, but you want your entrepreneurs to be able to pick which one is actually most applicable to them, that was really difficult to do with traditional Zoom. And thanks to Robbie Samuels, credit where credit is due, the hack of being able to assign everyone as a co-host can actually give every participant that agency to jump between breakout rooms on their own without you as the host having to control it. The co-host cannot create the breakout rooms. You still have to do that as the primary host. But as a co-host, they can open that dashboard and they can move themselves between the rooms. So that can be really powerful if, say, you're doing a small group that's talking about financial resilience, and another small group that's speaking about, say, marketing best practices, and another group that's talking about product market fit. You can allow your entrepreneurs to be able to move between those spaces. And for example, have like an expert who stays stable within each one, and they can jump in and out for example, an Ask Me Everything format. There are absolutely some what we're now calling Zoom hygiene better practices. I think most people at this point have lost their tolerance for some of the etiquette that we were willing to put up with when things first started closing and everybody was jumping online. So when you're thinking about things like everybody needing to be on mute, or showing up on time, or turning off your video if you might be doing something that you don't want to share via video with everybody. A lot of folks get it at this point, but we have found it is still better practice to name. Netiquette is one word folks have used, or hygiene is another folks have used, to be able to guide people into having a clean and professional video call.
So the first, especially with video, is the idea of just because I'm in gallery view doesn't mean that you're in gallery view. So if we want everyone to be looking at the same thing, asking people to either enter gallery view or pin a speaker video if there's guest speaker or somebody, a screen that you want to throw the focus to, just explicitly asking people to enter one of those views so that everyone is having a shared experience. There's also something really powerful that we've seen around shared virtual backgrounds. One of the things that has happened as we've moved to this virtual world is that sometimes people aren't comfortable being on camera, not because they don't like being on camera, but because they're not in control of what's behind them or their background. Maybe it's messy, maybe they have pets. So one of the ways we've found to create an even playing field is emailing out a virtual background that if people have a modern enough operating system, everybody can have the same background behind them. And the reason I said a modern enough operating system is that I happen to have a 10-year-old computer that can't do the virtual backgrounds. So it's a great idea as long as we make sure that everybody is able to deploy them.
And that brings us to some of the audio best practices. So especially if you are doing recording, turning on original sound is really important. There's a lot of modulation that Zoom does around sound to try to smooth out signals to help people come in more clear, to reduce echoes. So turning on that original sound can help make sure that you have a very clear and crisp audio quality for your recording. The second is to use headphones or a microphone. Speaking into a large room, into your computer's microphone directly, almost always creates some form of kind of cavernous echo that can be a bit challenging once again, especially if you're trying to record. And then the third is own your power as the host and your deputized co-host to mute participants. It's lovely to ask people to mute themselves. However, if you notice that someone has forgotten that or maybe thought that they were on mute and they're not, use your power as the host to keep that participant panel open. Zoom is wonderful where if it is picking up audio from someone's panel, either a little microphone with alternating green line for how loud someone is coming through. So you can just go in and click that mute. One lesson, FYI, that we have learned the hard way, muting yourself on your phone when you dial in does not necessarily mute you on Zoom. Reminding folks to hit *6, and that is the code that will actually mute them through Zoom's interface and not just using their phone's regular mute button.
Which brings us to setup. What are some of the settings we can take care of before a Zoom gathering to make sure that everything goes smoothly? The first is to turn off arrival notification. If people are arriving late, there's nothing worse than people popping in and it just gets announced with an annoying ding dong sound, especially as if you're in a longer convening, it's almost inevitable that at some point somebody's internet will glitch and they will be kicked off, and we want them to be able to just slip right back in without disturbing the convening. On that same note, don't lock the Zoom room, because if somebody gets kicked off or has to leave for any reason, they won't be able to get back in afterwards. So if you're going to have more than 2 people on there, do not lock the Zoom room. Do, however, set a password. And I think Zoom actually starting this month is going to be requiring meetings to have a password. It just mitigates against anything like Zoom bombing, having folks come in and hijack your meeting. To enhance that, you can create a waiting room for your meeting so you can make sure that you know that everybody who's coming in is supposed to be there. A waiting room is also a place where you as the host can pop into that waiting room and check in with people, maybe share a link, something for them to do as they wait for a convening to begin. And all of these settings help provide a really smooth experience for your participants.
Another that I might add that ties to the audio is you can have mute participants upon arrival, so that the default setting is that people come into the call muted, which can also be helpful if you have folks dropping in at different times. And as we move into recording, this is where you'll want to record in gallery view or speaker view. That is up to you as the host. Whoever is actually doing the recording is going to be the view that the video captures. One lesson, as you may see here, is that when you are sharing slides, for example, it is best to put the slides into full screen mode. It comes across clearer, and to actually minimize the small video window that normally would show up. And this just ensures that folks can see the full dimension of your slides. One lesson is if you click pause recording, it will keep that as one consistent audio or video file. If you click stop, it will actually break it into two files. And so depending on what your editing requirements are, if, for example, you're doing your session and then you're just taking a break, pause is great, because then you can just pause while that break is coming, restart the recording, and it's still just one continuous file. However, for example, if you have a guest speaker coming in who's sharing a presentation for like a discrete 10-minute or 20-minute portion of your larger agenda, you may want to stop recording before they start and then stop again after they finish, so that you have a really discrete audio or video file to be able to process. And that actually leads to just one other tip that we've learned, which is, to the extent possible, to pre-record videos like this, so that you're not using your time together with your cohort in lecture as much as possible. And that way your time spent together can really be in discussion and dialogue. Zoom is generally a tool that does enable a fair amount of participant agency. And what we mean by that is enabling the participants to self-direct where they want to go and what they want to engage in. Another thing that you can encourage among folks is leveraging the private chat, so that they can share contact information with one another. They can ask somebody a follow-up question. You can also use private chat when you're working with your speakers. So these are all tools that I think actually are, I wish I had these in real life. They would make some of these convenings easier. Anything else you'd like to add here, Michael?
Just the building on the power of private chat. I've been facilitating convenings recently where it's been really empowering for participants to be able to have a private chat with me if they're feeling some concerns come up or some questions that they don't feel addressing in front of the whole group. And so you can explicitly invite people to do that, particularly if you're engaging in any kind of sensitive conversations, which a lot of us are now, given everything that's going on in the world.
And so the final piece of this is their pricing model. So they do have a free version. It does have a 40-minute time limit. And it allows you to host up to 100 participants. You can do this once that 40-minute time limit is reached. You can actually have people leave and rejoin if you need to start another fresh 40 minutes. That free version can actually get you pretty far. The pro version is really great for these small teams. You can have multiple hosts per your account. You can have up to 100 participants. You can also just do a supplemental charge. If, for example, you all of a sudden have a webinar that's going to be 500 people or more, you can just pay a small fee to get that limit extended for a short period of time. Meeting duration limit is then 24 hours, and it also enables personalization of your meeting ID. Or any kind of accelerator program, we would suggest the pro account would probably meet almost all of your needs. And so with that, thank you all so much for joining.